King Charles III has just made a stunning and deeply personal confession, one that cuts right to the heart of his decades of royal duty and his role as a family patriarch. He fears that when he is gone, his own beloved grandchildren will stand in judgment and accuse him of having failed them. Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into the extraordinary details of the monarch's latest and perhaps strongest warning yet, a warning rooted in profound frustration and a grandfather's worry, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our deep dives into the crown and the future of the monarchy. It is rare for a reigning sovereign to speak with such raw, unfiltered emotion about a political issue, let alone one as globally divisive as climate change. But King Charles III, a man who has championed environmental causes since before they were fashionable, has pulled back the royal curtain to reveal his deepest insecurity. In a candid interview conducted with the celebrated wildlife expert and documentarian Steve Backshall for an upcoming feature, the king didn't just issue a policy statement, he delivered a heartfelt lament over the speed of global inaction and the weight of the legacy he is preparing to hand down. For those of us who have followed the king's journey, we know this is not a new crusade. Charles has spent the better part of 5 decades advocating for sustainability, organic farming, and ecological stewardship, often facing ridicule and dismissal from both politicians and the press. He was, for many years, the lonely voice in the wilderness, urging the world to pay attention to the fragile balance of nature. Now, as the science becomes undeniable and the effects of climate disruption are felt globally, the king's frustration has reached a boiling point, manifesting as a deep-seated fear for his family's future. His Majesty minced no words when discussing the global reluctance to accept overwhelming scientific consensus. He articulated a paradox that he finds utterly baffling and profoundly irritating. "It seems very peculiar to me," the king stated, reflecting on his long struggle, "that in other areas everybody takes what the scientists are saying as absolute vital truth. But in this case, for some reason or other, it is not so apparently simple. It can get very frustrating, to say the least." Think about the implications of that statement coming from a head of state, a man who sits atop a powerful structure that relies on expert advice for every decision from defense to diplomacy. The king is essentially observing a willful, dangerous cognitive dissonance among global leaders and the public. We trust scientists implicitly to develop life-saving vaccines, to build skyscrapers, and to navigate complex technology. Yet when those same experts warn of civilizational peril due to environmental collapse, their findings are often relegated to the realm of debate, or worse, dismissed entirely. This pervasive dismissal is what truly fuels the king's worry as he watches the critical window for meaningful intervention rapidly close. He posed a searing question that many of us in the older generation have asked ourselves as we observe the world we are leaving behind. "Why is it taking so long?" he asked, his voice conveying palpable urgency. "By which time it is almost too late to rectify. That's my great worry about it. Because you get to a tipping point, which is what all the scientists have been talking about. The concept of a tipping point is central to the king's worldview. It's not merely a dramatic phrase, it represents the moment where the Earth's natural systems, whether it's the melting of the polar ice caps, the collapse of ocean currents, or the irreversible destruction of rainforests, reach a point of no return, locking the planet into catastrophic changes that human effort can no longer reverse. For King Charles, watching humanity inch closer to this irreversible boundary, despite repeated warnings, is the definition of collective failure. But the most emotional and perhaps the most powerful aspect of this revelation is the intensely personal motivation behind his tireless work. When a monarch speaks of their legacy, it usually involves constitutional matters, the Commonwealth, or the continuity of the crown. For Charles, his legacy is measured in the health of the planet he passes down to his own bloodline. King Charles III is grandfather to 5 young souls: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, Prince Archie. The children of both Prince William and Prince Harry represent the future of the House of Windsor, and more importantly, the generations who will inherit the consequences of today's decisions. This familial responsibility, this deep-seated desire to protect his grandchildren, is the true engine driving his environmental passion. He confessed that his mind is constantly occupied by the younger generations and the sheer injustice of the situation. He admitted that the thought of disappointing them is a constant burden. "I mind for what it's worth about the younger generations," he stated poignantly. "To me, it is not fair to leave them something in a far worse state than I found it." This is the philosophy that has underpinned his entire adult life. The concept that each generation has a moral obligation to leave the world slightly better than they received it. It is a fundamental principle of stewardship, a concept deeply rooted in the historical responsibilities of a monarch to their realm. The whole point I have always felt is to improve it for people so they don't have a ghastly legacy of horror to have to deal with. The grandfather to George, Charlotte, Louis, Archie, and Lilibet noted, underscoring the severity of the potential outcomes. He isn't talking about financial debt or political instability. He is talking about an ecological horror. And then came the ultimate confession. The reason he has endured decades of criticism. The reason he has dedicated so much time and energy to this singular cause. It is not for applause or historical recognition. It is purely driven by a desire to avoid the agonizing accusation of inaction from the children he loves most dearly. He went on to add, in words that should resonate with every grandparent watching this video, "That's why I spent all these years, because I don't want to be accused by my grandchildren of not doing anything about it. That is the key." Imagine the weight of that statement. The King of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth is motivated not by international treaties or diplomatic pressures, but by the fear of failing a 6-year-old Prince George or a 3-year-old Princess Lilibet. This confession transforms the abstract concept of climate change into a tangible, deeply personal family matter. It grounds the global crisis in the universal experience of familial love and generational responsibility. This is particularly significant because since ascending the throne, King Charles III has diligently worked to adhere to the constitutional requirement for the monarch to remain politically neutral. His environmental activism, which was often provocative during his time as the Prince of Wales, has necessarily been toned down. Yet, in this interview, we see the true, passionate heart of the man beneath the crown, the man who simply cannot remain silent when he sees the future of his family threatened. Despite the intensity of his worry and the depth of his frustration over the glacial pace of change, the king refuses to succumb to fatalism. This is critical. For all his stark warnings about the tipping point and the danger of delay, Charles remains fundamentally an optimist, or perhaps a determined pragmatist, who understands that despair is the ultimate barrier to action. He emphasized that the situation, however dire it may seem, is not yet hopeless. There is still time, but that time must be used immediately and decisively. "These things are rescuable," the king insisted. "We have to believe that it is still possible, because you have to have hope. But to provide that hope, you have to take the action." This message is not just a plea for environmental policy, it's a profound statement on leadership. It suggests that hope is not a passive emotion, but a direct result of tangible effort. You don't wait for hope to appear, you generate it through action. This is the challenge he lays down for world leaders, for the Commonwealth nations, and for all of us. The king's lifelong commitment to this cause is perhaps best understood through the historical context of his advocacy. When he first began speaking out in the 1970s, warning about pollution, chemical farming, and the unsustainable consumption of resources, he was often labeled eccentric, a crank who talked to plants, a phrase that became a recurring joke in the British press. Yet he persevered, establishing sustainable communities, promoting organic farming at his Duchy of Cornwall estate, and creating organizations dedicated to ecological restoration. He was ahead of his time, and now, time has caught up to his warnings. This new documentary interview offers us a crucial glimpse into the mind of a monarch grappling with the most significant existential crisis of our era. He is confronting the harsh reality that his generation, and the generations before him, may have failed to adequately protect the planet, leaving the youngest members of the royal family, Prince George, who is destined to inherit the throne, and his siblings and cousins, to face the fiercest consequences. The fear of being accused by one's own grandchildren is a universal human motivator, transcending royal titles and constitutional duties. It is the core fear of failing to provide, of failing to protect. By framing the climate crisis in such deeply personal terms, King Charles III has delivered a far more powerful message than any state speech or policy address could ever achieve. He has reminded us that this is not about politics. It is about parenthood, stewardship, and the solemn duty we all share to protect the earth for those who come after us. His Majesty's words serve as a crucial rallying cry, urging us all to move beyond frustration and paralysis and into meaningful action before that critical tipping point is reached. Because, as the King so clearly articulated, the key to avoiding the tragic accusation of inaction from future generations lies entirely in what we choose to do today. We want to hear your thoughts on this extraordinary confession. Do you believe King Charles is right to frame the climate crisis as a personal legacy issue tied to his grandchildren? Does hearing the monarch express such a deep human fear motivate you to think differently about global inaction? Please share your perspectives in the comments section below. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this important discussion. If you found this analysis insightful, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the royal family and global affairs. Until next time, take care.